Oh my God, this is a reply to Wheezy, but not really. I'm not really replying to all of his video on this or his act of calling President Obama. Really, what motivated me to want to make another video about this is the Daily Show, which it must have been Monday's Daily Show because I watch them a day late on the internet when I watch them. But it's just this, Jon Stewart had this idea where he's lecturing Julian Assange. Listen, buddy, we know Iran-Contra and all these other things. We know this is no news. So we know the government lies to us, and that's it. That's all there is to know. Not like what they're lying about. Not to keep up or, for God forbid, stop them from like, no, we learned that's the way it is. We're just giving it. Not me. I'm not happy with the government just constantly lying to us. Look, would you want to go into war for no reason? No, nobody would want to go to war with no reason. All the talking heads have to talk it over in all the edits and all the editorials all across the country and the world. But it's okay for them to lie about the reason. So you don't want to go for no reason, but if you're lied to about the reason, that's okay. It makes no fucking sense. This is why you get called sheep, people. So, for example, when the war started, the Iraq War, they said, we're not going to keep track of casualty counts. No, we're not going to do that. Well, I knew that was a lie. Why? Because it's a necessity of running the war to do it competently at all that, of course, you're going to make estimates of how many people you've killed, enemy combatants, civilians, the deviations, is it in groups of 2 or 4 or 10 or 100? So lo and behold, with these leaks, what do we find out? Oh, they are keeping casualty estimates. Wow, big surprise. Why do you want to support that lie? They say they're not going to get the numbers. Why? Because they're not going to tell you the goddamn numbers. And that's national security. The other thing is there's lots of crimes. Lots of people are like, well, these don't really amount to much. There's lots of crimes, and even this latest bit, which is basically just embarrassing a bunch of diplomats, and cry me a fucking river over that. Yeah, it is interesting, the views of our views of China's view of North Korea. That is interesting. You know what else is interesting, and that has been known, that that the Saudi government, they foment. They are the primary. There's studies showing they're still the primary money givers to Al Qaeda and terrorism around the world, for at least that branch of terrorism. And they're fomenting anti-American sentiments while they're asking us to do their dirty work and for our children to die in war attacking Iran, where they can't even say in public a criticism of Iran. They're pretending to be our enemies, and really we're in bed together, and and you're just fine with that. That's not interesting. It's a bit entirely ridiculous. And what's with conservatives? All I hear is the government's evil, it's a corrupt, it's a criminal organization, but it has a right to lie. We, as citizens, are under an increased scrutiny. Ridiculous TSA screening, right? Cameras at all our stoplights. Soon RFIDs in all our products helping us be tracked in a statistically inescapable way. And what's the justification? Well, if you're innocent, you have nothing to fear. You have nothing to hide. And the government's position seems to be, but we're fucking criminals. We have shitloads of stuff to hide. We need secrets. And the sheep are just like, yeah, that sounds good to me. It's ridiculous. The next batch of Wikileaks is supposed to be about Bank of America, or at least the banking industry. That should be interesting. Yeah, it'll be full of proof of things we already know that they already deny. Yeah, everybody already knows it, and they are constantly denying it. Anybody that's actually arguing politics with people and saying, oh, well, you can't trust the government, of course they're going to take, I said this to people, of course they're going to keep casualty statistics estimates for how many people they've killed. Hello, of course. No, and it's a conspiracy theory, and you just have to take the government's word for it until you find out. And when we do find out, it's like, oh, that should have been kept secret. We can't handle that information. Well, speak for your fucking self. Yeah, you sheep can't handle information because you want to do crimes. You don't want to have to face it. Here's the rule should be. What the rule should be is that you cannot classify evidence of an illegal act. If it's illegal by the United States rule, then you can't classify it. You know, if it's not illegal, like chewing gum in Singapore, that's not illegal. Fuck, I don't care. Keep it classified if there's a reason, but there has to be a reason. But if the information is evidence of an illegal act by U.S. laws, then it can't be classified. If it has been classified and discovered, total amnesty for the leaker. Total amnesty. It's whistleblowing. End of story. Boom, end of story. Not only that, but you go in there and whoever classified it goes to fucking jail. How about that? And I feel pretty much the same about classifying embarrassing information. I don't trust just some dumbass bureaucrat to decide what's embarrassing. I think it's embarrassing to make a fool of yourself. But here's another thing people just need to learn about relationships. If you're constantly lying to someone, then when someone comes along and tells that other person the truth, you can't say, they've undermined my relationship with that other person. You fucking did by lying to the person. You know, and this is the most depressing thing in social philosophy. You know, this is why you have to blame the voters more than the politicians. Because the voters want this kind of thing. Yeah, please lie to me. And then when they're lied, it's something they wanted to know about. Well, that was wrong. Well, why'd you want them to have that discretion? It's a threat to national security for our military to report how many people it's killed. Because of what? You know, I don't support releasing information that endangers an individual. You know, like John is pretending to be a Chinese and he works in a arms manufacturing plant and gives us information. No. But that we might try to do that with someone, that I don't think could be classified. Who that person is and the specifics, the numerical codes to unleash nuclear death, the phone numbers that you have to call to hack the system, those could be kept private. Those aren't illegal acts. That's a legitimate security concern. But the idea that, well, we're going to break laws, you know, like the torture stuff, okay, that should all be, there's no question, it should just get released, you know. You know, but the idea that, oh, we're going to investigate the Iraqi prisons and oh, nope, there's no torture going on, while in reality, not only is there torture going on, but it's sanctioned by us and even trained by us in some cases. Yeah, I don't see why we have to support the military's right to tell us, yes, we've made sure it's cleaned up and the Iraqi police force is totally ready to take over, and it's just a lie. Why do you want to support that? Because I need to be lied to. Hey, if you're smart enough to know you need to be lied to, then you're smart enough just to hear the truth and react to it, you know, as an adult, saying, well, that's bad, but it's necessary. But you don't even want to have to face that. You don't want to have to say, I support torture, it's necessary. You want to say, I support them lying to me about torture so I can pretend I'm against it when in reality I'm for it, and they're doing me a favor because they're consciously for it, and they're lying to me about it so I can keep my moral self-picture. You know, fuck that bullshit. You're a bunch of sheep, man. If we had a law where illegal information could not be classified and where releasing or information about illegal acts and where releasing information about illegal acts was automatically covered with immunity, then yeah, I could say, okay, you know what, maybe these guys should go to jail for releasing a memo where some diplomat says, I really hate the president of the country I'm a diplomat in. You know, okay, keep it private, whatever. Sometimes, you know, that kind of, you know, I don't really support the two-faced nature of it, but if it's a matter of diplomacy, like that guy knows you're not too fond of him, but he doesn't need to hear that you think he smells like a dog, fine. But we're not in that situation. We're in that situation where they are hiding moral and literally legal crimes. Okay, that's different. That should not be protected. You know, and left and right, everybody's like, ooh, blah, 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 blah. You know. And on the whole Interpol thing for Assange, it could just be trumped up. It could be, you know, it could be who knows what. It could be any kind of person he was seduced into it. It could be a honeypot of some sort to get him in his personal life. Or it could be really that he has some problems. He's going to have to answer that, because to not answer that plays right into their hands, because all they really want is the question up there. That's what serves their purpose. So that every time you discuss WikiLeaks, you have to discuss this